Let's talk about history. Today I'm going to be speaking a little bit about Norwich history, and I'm going to be speaking about whaling in New London, and showing a couple sea captains of Connecticut, their houses. So I hope you enjoy my show. Thank you. Norwich, Connecticut. This is taken from Wikipedia. Norwich, also called the Rose of New England, is a city in New London County, Connecticut, United States. The Antic, Shetucket, and Quinebaug rivers flow into the city and form its harbor, from which the Thames River flows south to Long Island Sound. The population was 40,125 at the 2020 United Census. The town of Norwich was founded on the site of what is now Norwich Town in 1659 by settlers from Saybrook Colony, led by John Mason and James Fitch. They purchased the land 9 miles square that became Norwich from Mohegan Sachem Uncas. One of the co-founders of Norwich was Thomas Leffingwell, who rescued Uncas when surrounded by his Narragansett enemies, and whose son established the Leffingwell Inn. In 1668, a wharf was established at Antic Cove. Settlement was primarily in the 3-mile, 4.8 kilometers area around the Norwich Town Green. The 69 founding families soon divided up the land in the Norwich Town vicinity for farms and businesses. By 1694, the public landing built at the head of the Thames River allowed ships to unload goods at the harbor. The harbor area is known as the Chelsea neighborhood. The distance from the port to Norwich Town was served by the East and West roads, which became Washington Street and Broadway. The original center of the town was a neighborhood now called Norwich Town, an inland location chosen to be the center of a primarily agricultural farming community. By the late 18th century, shipping at the harbor became far more important than farming, especially when industrial mills began manufacturing on the three smaller rivers. By the early 19th century, the center of Norwich had effectively moved to the Chelsea neighborhood. The official buildings of the city were located at the harbor area, such as the City Hall, courts, and post offices, in all the large 19th century urban blocks. The former center is now called Norwich Town to distinguish it from the current city. Norwich merchants were shipping goods directly from England, but the Stamp Act of 1764 forced Norwich to become more self-sufficient. Large mills and factories sprang up at the falls on the rivers which traversed the town, the largest of which was the Panema Mill in the Taffel neighborhood. The ship captains of Norwich and New London were avoiding skillful at avoiding imperial taxation during peacetime, and were later just as successful eluding warships during the American Revolution. Norwich supported the cause for independence by supplying soldiers, ships, and munitions, and it was also a center of activity for the Sons of Liberty. The Oxford English Dictionary attests the first recorded use of the word hello to the Norwich Courier on October 18, 1826. Regular steamship service between New York and Boston helped Norwich to prosper as a shipping center through the early part of the 19th century. During the Civil War, Norwich once again rallied and saw the growth of its textile, armaments, and specialty item manufacturing. This was also spurred by the building of the Norwich and Worcester Railroad. In 1832 through 1837, bringing goods and people in and out of Norwich. By the 1870s, the Springfield and New London Railroad was also running trains through Norwich. In 1892, the city's first excuse me, the city's first electric trolleys started service to the area and to some cities, including New London, Willimantic, Putnam, and Westerly, Rhode Island. The town and city of Norwich were consolidated in 1952. The geography of Norwich, according to the United States Census Bureau, the city has a total of 29.5 square miles, 76.4 kilometers, of which 28.3 square miles is land and 1.2 square miles is water. So in New London, the second largest whaling port in the world in the middle of the 19th century was in New London, Connecticut. New Londoners have always depended upon their excellent harbor and their connection to the sea for their livelihood, so it should come as no surprise that they would seek to meet the market demand and exploit the world's largest mammals for their oil. At the end of the 18th and beginning of the 19th century, the development of steam engines and machinery for spinning and weaving textiles created an industrial revolution. Those machines also created demand for fine lubricants. The oil from whales, especially sperm whales, was the finest, and New London whalesmen increasingly sought to return from distant voyages with ships full of oil to sell. By the middle of the 19th century, New London had become the second largest whaling port in the world. A total of 257 ships embarked on over 1,100 separate whaling voyages between 1718 and 1908. New London vessels hold records for the longest voyage and most successful voyage, the first steam-powered whaling vessel, and the largest whale ship. New London captains were some of the first to go whaling and sealing in remote areas of the Western Arctic and Indian Oceans. Oil taken from the sperm whales is the finest natural lubricant in the world. Unlike most animal fats, sperm oil is classified as liquid paraffin. It is very stable, does not degrade and become sticky, and burns very clearly and very brightly with no soot and smoke. It has been used to lubricate the most delicate of instruments and in a number of industrial applications. So this is the kind of lamp that they used in the 1700s and 1800s. It's for burning whale oil. And you would put a wick in here and it would burn its pewter and it would burn the whale oil, and use this as a lamp, an oil lamp, whale oil lamp. Because of its exceptional burning characteristics, the government was one of the largest purchasers of sperm oil during the 19th century to use in coastal lighthouses, where the safety of shipping and passengers depended upon avoiding dangerous shoals, rocks, and islands. Until the selling of whale products became illegal in 1972, Sperm oil was used in car transmissions, to lubricate locks and sewing machines, and for delicate machinery on submarines and satellites. A key to the house flags of the whaling firms of New London, 1846. The large capital investment involved in putting together the ship and outfit for a whaling voyage was managed by agents who were generally the primary owners of the ships. Not wanting to put all of their eggs in one basket, whaling merchants were more likely to own several partial shares of a number of vessels rather than being the sole owner of one vessel. In 1846, New London had more whaling ships on the seas than any other port other than New Bedford, Massachusetts. The 15 firms operating in New London in that year are listed with their house flag. The house flags were important communicators, flying most of the time at the peak of the main or foresail. The flags would be seen at a great distance, and the ship could be identified even from far away. Captains would sometimes move the signal to different locations on the ship to communicate with their crews who were out pursuing whales in smaller whaleboats. Just about everyone's livelihood depended upon whaling. At the middle of the 19th century, New London's economy was driven by the effort required to bring more large amounts of oil processed from the blubber of whales to shore. The city directory of the time lists shipbuilders, sailmakers, coopers to make barrels to hold the oil, and the provisions and bakers. To bake the ship's bread, rope makers, block makers, and smiths are some of the most obvious related businesses. But there were also photographers, ship cigar merchants, ready-made clothing stores, and lots of saloons, all catering to men about to head out for long journeys. The men who owned the ships often also had businesses that supplied the materials that were required for a voyage. They owned the banks and railroads, building supplies, companies, and hardware stores, and ran the town. The wives of seamen made clothing to sell, took in laundry, and did other handiwork as they cared for their families and waited for their sailors to return. The wives of captains and merchants organized the Lewis Female Society to support the vulnerable families left behind, and the Seamen's Friend Society to attempt to provide alternatives to the saloons. If you notice on Laurel Hill, some of the houses that go up on hill, they have like a little tiny porch at the top of the house by the roof, and there's a window, and that's called the widow's peak. And women used to come out and look for their husbands, see if they're coming in to harbor after sailing, after being away for so long. So, speaking of captains, there's one captain's house on East Main Street. Is Captain Whiting. Um, this is one captain that lived in Norwich. On East Main, 337 East Main Street, Norwich. This is his house. Built about 1827, the frame house preserves an interesting Greek Revival facade. The building was built about 1827, so that's where Captain Whiting lived. It was built in 1827 on East Main Street in Norwich. And then Captain Richard Charlton's house is on Mediterranean Lane. Captain Richard Charlton's house is located in Norwich's Norwichtown neighborhood on the northwest side of Mediterranean Lane, Norwich, of East Town Street. It is a 1.5-story wood frame structure, 5 bay windows and a side gable roof, and a large central chimney. The front door, centered on the main facade, is framed by skylight windows where with reproduced bullseye glass panes and pilasters. The interior was a typical central chimney plan with an entry vestibule that also houses a narrow winding staircase to the attic. What was originally the kitchen and is now the living room is to the left, while there are a small bedroom and modern kitchen to the right. Floor plans have wide wooden boards and walls are finished to reproduce vertical parking. Door hardware is a combination of original old and reproduction wrought iron. It is estimated that the house was built around 1800, probably replacing a smaller house built for Captain Richard Charlton, a ship's captain. Charlton was a locally notable ship's captain who was killed in military service during the French and Indian War. This house may have been built with framing timbers from Charlton's original house by his son Samuel. The building underwent a major restoration in the 20th century. And then this 265-year-old inn is one of the most haunted places in Connecticut. Coming up here, the picture of an inn in Preston. And you can spend the night here. This house is in Preston, Connecticut. Do you believe in ghosts? If not, you might just change your mind after an overnight stay at Connecticut's most haunted inn. Captain Grant's is a beautiful bed and breakfast with a long history of opening its doors to welcome weary travelers since before the American Revolution. While the guests are continually changing, the inn has a few permanent residents. Ghosts. Built in 1754, Captain Grant's is an extraordinary place of Connecticut's history. Located in Preston, the gorgeous bed and breakfast once sheltered Continental soldiers and provided a safe haven for runaway slaves. So if you'd ever like to visit there, you can stay the night there. Okay. Thank you for watching my show. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.